Hey folks, this is B from kongs-r-rus, and I have a special guest, Mrs. kongs-r-rus, that'll be helping me review my Star Wars Arcade1Up Pinball.
At $550, Arcade1Up pinball machines are an extremely great value for the build quality, haptic feedback, and smooth gameplay experience. The cab is perfect for casual pinball fans that happen to be die-hard Star Wars fans. If you're a virtual pinball enthusiast, or you've played Pinball FX3 on a PC or console, this cab has many drawbacks and may not be for you. Let's go into an in-depth review of Arcade1Up's first virtual pinball cab. Arcade1Up did a fantastic job packaging the cab and having most of the main body assembled out of the box. The quality of parts is phenomenal, including the metal legs, trim, lockdown bar, and its use of the same half-inch MDF seen on other Arcade1Ups. Setup was fairly straightforward. However, Mr. kongs-r-rus immediately added his spare 22-inch monitor, which fit perfectly in the back box. More on that later, and check out his initial first thoughts in this linked video. Now let's take a look at the fully assembled cab, which is an absolute beauty. Arcade1Up knocked it out of the park with the design and overall proportions of the cab. The artwork features the original Star Wars trilogy characters on one side and the more recent trilogy characters on the other. The light-up back glass features a mashup of several light and dark side force users. Plus you see Yoda and Darth Maul making an appearance here. The back glass graphic lights up very evenly with the LED strip installed in the back box and looks gorgeous fully lit up. The curved back box design matches perfectly when placed next to similar shaped Arcade1Ups. Overall, this cab is a fantastic looking addition to any 3/4 scale arcade.
Thanks, Mrs. kongs-r-rus. Let's move to the technical specs of the pinball cab, starting with the 24-inch LCD monitor, which doesn't have any labels or markings to indicate its brand. We can assume these were specially made for Arcade1Up pinball cabs, as it does support 1080p output. However, the stock PCB is only pushing a 720p signal. The back box includes a second 7.5-inch LCD monitor for the DMD or dot matrix display with a screen resolution of 800 by 480 pixels. The DMD connects to the PCB via HDMI, which is a handy feature for future modding purposes. Unfortunately, the image quality of both monitors is pretty poor, as the main playfield colors look washed out during gameplay and the DMD has poor black uniformity. Furthermore, the DMD display only utilizes about half the screen to show scores and simple animations. The unused black space on the top and bottom really show how washed out the DMD looks. The actual 24-inch playfield itself may seem small, but when recessed into the cabinet, it actually matches the proportions of the cab very well, and I personally don't mind the 24-inch size. The back box also includes two standard 3-inch speakers which connect to the DMD and also features some handsome speaker grills on the front. To look under the hood of the cab, remove the screws on the metal trim and lockdown bar. Then lift the small piece of MDF on the front and carefully lift off the plexiglass and recessed bezel. Remove the 4 screws on the sides of the monitor and lift the entire monitor frame. And lastly, lock the joints by pulling them forward until they click into place. Inside the cab, there are several parts, including 4 solenoids, an accelerometer, a power supply, and an encoder for the buttons and analog plunger. Towards the back of the cab, the stock PCB is attached to the back of the 24-inch monitor. Now let's take a look at each of these components and break down what they do and how they work. The PCB is the brains of the cab and has several new components, including an HDMI port to connect to the DMD display. It receives power from a built-in 12-volt power supply in the middle of the cab, which is plugged into a 12-volt 5A adapter outside of the cab. The on-off switch on the front, plus all 4 solenoids, are wired into 12-volt power supply as well. Solenoids are haptic feedback devices that use electromagnetic coils to push a metal rod against a metal surface, and it produces a thump or clicking sound. These fire off when pressing the flipper buttons on either side or when hitting bumpers during gameplay. The accelerometer is a motion sensor device that produces a nudge effect when the cab is physically moved hard enough. The flipper, launch, and front buttons are standard Arcade1Up buttons with micro switches that plug into the encoder mounted behind the front of the cab. The plunger looks very authentic and uses a magnetic sensor to register analog signals into the encoder, But while it's awesome that Arcade1Up got an analog plunger working, the range on the magnetic sensor is fairly limited, so it only works up to a certain point and doesn't register when pulled all the way back. The entire cab boots up with the single flip of the on-off switch on the front of the cab, and both the main display and DMD take about 30 seconds to fully boot up to get to the main menu. After selecting your language preference, you can use the flippers to navigate the menu and cycle through the 10 Star Wars themed pinball tables. Press the launch button under the plunger to enter a game, and there's several options for single player or multiplayer games. Now these tables are ports of the Android version of Pinball FX3 developed by Zen Studios and have noticeable differences in image quality. First, the 720p output from the PCB to the 24-inch playfield creates a low-resolution playing experience where you can see jagged lines across the table, especially on the flippers and tables with wire ramps. More importantly, the textures, shades, and overall graphic details have been reduced even from the Android version of the same tables that I play on my phone. Take a look at the comparison between the Android version of Boba Fett table on my Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and the Arcade1Up version. You can see the washed out colors on the Arcade1Up port not only on Boba Fett himself, but the surrounding areas. Now look at the exact same table on my PC Steam version on a 1080p monitor compared to the Arcade1Up version. Again, the graphical differences are drastic and most noticeable if you've ever played Pinball FX3 previously on a PC or console. Now I wasn't expecting PC quality graphics on the Arcade1Up version, but when I finally saw it in person, it was kind of like I watched HD TV for a long time and then I went back to watching standard definition TV. I just couldn't unsee the low quality graphics as I've been used to playing Pinball FX3 on my PC for quite some time. But if this is your first time playing Pinball FX3, you may be perfectly satisfied with the quality of graphics as it's good enough for the casual pinball fan. That being said, the actual gameplay experience is very smooth and plays extremely well with the haptic feedback. I was very impressed with the overall integration of all 4 solenoids, which fire when the flippers are pressed and the bumpers are hit. Furthermore, the analog plunger works decently to pull back and do trick shots on each table. But as mentioned before, the range on the magnetic sensor is short and doesn't register when pulling all the way back. Check out more sample gameplay of all 10 tables. Now let's move on to modding potential and see if it's worth upgrading your machine to play more virtual pinball games. At $550, Arcade1Up pinball machines again are a great entry-level cab with all the essential basic parts to build a mid-level tier V-Pin cab. If you were to build your own DIY virtual pinball cabinet using the cheapest kits and got similar parts, it would probably cost more than an Arcade1Up in parts alone, not to mention that you have to take the effort to put it all together yourself. For example, let's take a look at the Game Room Solutions 27-inch mid-size virtual pinball cabinet, which starts at $299. Once you add in installed graphics, T-molding, and button controls, it already comes out to $450 just from Game Room Solutions. Plus, you're gonna need at least 2 monitors or 3 depending if you want to install a DMD, so let's say you can get those used on Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp, that's gonna be at least another $100 or so. And lastly, you're gonna need pinball legs and brackets, which again range in cost but around $50 to $75 for your pinball legs. Add up all of those parts that I just mentioned and it's already over $625, plus we haven't even added any haptic feedback, speakers, or any actual systems to play your games. So is it worth it? I absolutely think so. At again $550 plus tax or whatnot, you get a pre-built system with all the basic features you want for an entry-level V-Pin cab, plus you can reuse all those components in a mod itself. Again, Arcade1Up is great for something you want to play out of the box and has great modding potential, so I would recommend it if you wanted to use it as a base for your mod as well. Anything else to add, Mrs. kongs-r-rus?
For Arcade1Up's first attempt into the virtual pinball market, I think they delivered an extremely affordable option for casual pinball fans to get a small taste of the virtual pinball world. The hardcore virtual pinball community may frown upon these Arcade1Ups but these cabs have opened up the doors to the masses and have the potential to bring in many fans to the hobby. I personally see this as a great opportunity for the V-Pin community to shine and share their amazing collective knowledge with more people. A quick shout out to Major Frenchie, Terry Red, DDH69, Vic VP, and many others who have taken the time to create tutorials and provide resources about building your own virtual pinball cabinet.
Thanks for helping out with this review, Mrs. kongs-r-rus, and I'm excited personally for the future of virtual pinball and plan to continue my learning journey as I finish my own mod on my Arcade1Up pinball machine. Be on the lookout for future tutorial videos on how I changed my Arcade1Up into a dedicated Pinball FX3 cabinet. And again, if you like this video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and thanks for taking it to
The next level. Hello, baby. You're so round.